Hey, fellow tennis nerds. I hope all is well. Another episode of the Tennis Nerd Podcast with Juan here from Restring. He has this new string Zero out. He's also a great player. He's visited me in Marbella, and we hit some balls. You've maybe seen that video. If not, please check it out. The string is great, so just for that reason only. How are you today, Juan?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Jonas. Really happy to be on the podcast.
And you're also a member of the Nordic Dots team now.
Correct. Yeah, I met Irakli when I was in Marbella. We actually got started speaking when the brand first launched, so I've been following them since. Really love their designs, and fortunately, we managed to collaborate. We did a little photo shoot, so that was my first time, and it was good. Really nice to meet him and get to see the clothing as well.
Yeah, and you're a good model. Like good fit, good height. So I think that's great for him as well. And also, I love the clothes; they're good. I don't get paid to wear them, so it's just it's what I.
Yeah, no, me neither. The quality is honestly nice. They have nice jackets, pants, socks, shirts, you name it, they have it, which is really nice. So really happy that I get to use their clothing.
Yeah, cool. So let's start with, before we get into the string and the company you're working on, how was the DC, the Citi Open that I sadly missed? DC used to be my hometown many years ago, but I want to go to the Citi Open, couldn't make it this year. But you were a hitting partner for a bit, right?
Yeah, no, really fortunate for the experience. It was very humbling. I enjoyed it. I was there, fortunately, for the whole week. I started the Friday before the qualifying, and it went right through the final. The busiest days are at the very beginning, qualifying Saturday, Sunday, and then the Monday, Tuesday, where you have the majority of the players practicing and have their matches. And then as the week goes on, you have less players at the tournament, so less hitting practices. But yeah, so I was there. There were a couple lefties hitting partners as well with me. So one of the pros and cons of being a lefty is that you're there for special requests. So the more lefties that there are in the draw, the happier I am, because the more chances of someone, requesting a lefty for them to hit with.
Yeah. So it's based on that. So it's just they're preparing for this opponent, and then they need a lefty guy because they're playing a lefty guy. How many lefties are there on the ATP tour? I can't even mention 10. I mean, how many?
They were at the Citi Open. There were 6 men in the main draw, and then I think two or three women on the WTA side.
Yeah, no, it's tricky to play lefties. We all know that, so we're not.
I hate playing lefties.
You feel that too, you feel like you're playing a mirror image.
You are, yeah. The spin comes a different way, especially on the serves. That's honestly the most bothersome part for me is when you play a lefty that you think it's going to kick one way, it comes the other. But yeah, I was there. Great experience. I managed to hit with singles, doubles players, ATP, WTA, practices were either for 30 minutes or an hour long, depending on whether they had a match coming up or they were practicing and they had a match the next day. So it was really interesting to get to see the behind the scenes. Fortunately, as a hitting partner, you had access, at least in this tournament, you had access to the locker room. So you were there, you had access to the showers, you're practically showering with these guys. So it was really nice that you got to live. I got to live that life for a week, and it was really nice.
Yeah, I think I hear that from my friend Carl, who's on Safulin's team as a coach. He says just you're in the player room, because a lot of guys, obviously, I think most guys who are coaches or hitting partners or involved in tennis, one dream, one time in their life was to become a pro player, and just feeling how that is and being around it is a pretty cool experience in general. I think that's what a lot of people like.
And for me, the most interesting part, or what I pay the most attention to, is what happens off the court, off the match court. I want to see, in the locker room, in the gym especially, how long before practice do they warm up? What sort of exercises do they do? Are they doing mobility, range of motion? All of that is really where my biggest interest is. And then on the tennis court, how they warm up is really interesting. For me, the one that stood out the most was with Leila Fernandez. Fortunately, we hit 3 times that week. And 2 sessions were for 1 hour, 1 session was for 30 minutes. And the 3 times she started the practice the exact same way. It was mini tennis, short court through the middle, mini tennis cross court. Then we did this, and then mini tennis, she would go 1 cross, 1 line on both sides. And then we would repeat the same thing from the baseline. So things like that, that you really don't see as a tennis fan through the TV, are the things that stand out to me the most.
Why do you think she wanted to do that? Is that just something that is kind of coming from an old coach, father, whatever. I don't know her coaching situation. Like, because usually these are habits that are built in somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, no, her father was there. He said, really nice guy. We spoke for a bit. He said that he recently joined back the coaching team. He was out for about 6 months or so now he's back there. But Layla's game, since it's not based on power, more or less it's based on accuracy. That's why they practice angles. So with the mini tennis, she has really good hands, good wrist action as well. So that's how she would warm up and finesse her touch and her angles as well.
Wow, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I actually talked to Carl Adriano because he hit with her she was in Estepona actually, where I just came from, and her. I mean, obviously she's not a power player like Sabalenka or anyone, but she has a good like sense of opening up the court and then going in for a volley. She's really good at that kind of skill.
And then now it makes sense as to why they do that sort of practice. So again, it's extremely interesting to see what goes on behind the scenes. Outside of that, the match court really.
Yeah. Well, was there anything else you noticed, like with other players, that kind of surprised you in a way, that how they prepared or how they did the drills?
Yeah, one offs. For example, with Samsonova, we hit as well. What was interesting is that for her, whenever, again, I saw this throughout the week, so whenever she would warm up her serves, most players, they'll serve a couple down the tee, a couple out wide. But what she would do is she would serve 7 or 8 serves, her coach feeding her the ball and her hitting. And so the arm would be in consistent fluid motion. So as soon as she would finish the serve, she would have her racket up to hit the next ball. And her coach was feeding 8 balls in a row. That was really interesting, stood out to me. But I understand the perspective. It's all for fluidity and to warm up your range of motion when you're hitting a serve. So that was another thing that definitely stood out to me.
Do you did you hit with anyone like that you felt like, okay, the power was surprising or the spin was surprising, or where it felt like you were surprised by the experience of playing with this person?
Yeah, most shocking or nervous session was with Tiafoe. I was hitting with Fernandez, and Tiafoe was playing a lefty in his next round. So as I was serving to Fernandez, his coach comes over and he said, "Hey, could you come over and serve a few balls when you're done?" And I was like, okay. I didn't think much of it. But then when I went to the court next door, I probably hit maybe 10 minutes of serves to Tiafoe on the do side and then on the ad side. And every time I would bend my legs for the service motion, I could feel them shaking. It was just a very surreal experience to hit with a top 10 guy for a bit. And then in terms of what your question was, in terms of the weight of the ball, I hit with Pavic for an hour or a little bit more. And when you see him playing, he's a double specialist. It doesn't seem like he hits the ball very hard. It's all based on placement. But even rallying with him from the baseline, his ball had a ton of weight. To me, it came very heavy. So that's one of the things that stood out, is that on TV, you see the ball one way. But then in person, when you hit against it, it's a completely different ball. And the TV doesn't do the right justice in terms of showing how fast the ball comes or how much spin it has or even the weight.
Yeah, I think that's generally a problem when you have all these kind of huge bird's eye view, is that you can spot the angles really well, but you can't spot the pace and the spin. So it gets really difficult to understand. Tennis looks pretty easy, and then you hit with anyone who hits heavy balls, and you're like, oh no,
and you're done. Yeah, that's for sure.
So you had a really good overall experience, like of the Citi Open this year.
Yeah, no, overall really nice. Made some nice friends as well during that week. Saw some friends locally that live in the DC area. So 10 out of 10. Very grateful that I was able to do it, and yeah, just overall very grateful for that experience.
How hot was it? Was it like a heat wave there?
It was toasty. Honestly, the first weekend it was 38, 39 degrees Celsius, which in Fahrenheit maybe is 110, 115 or so. So it got up. It was pretty hot, especially on the tennis court. The temperature goes up a couple of degrees. But then as the week went on, the temperature dropped. So that was nice. What was interesting as well is that because you have access to string your racket, you get to see a bit of the tensions that the players use. And as the week was hot, the first weekend, the tensions were quite high, maybe a pound or two higher than what they were at the end of the week when the temperature dropped. So that was also interesting to see that not all, but you had a couple of players that did change their tension as the tournament went on.
Yeah, it makes sense. I see more and more experimentation in general, I think. I mean, like you have guys like Rafa who always goes 55 pounds no matter what. Like it's a storm or it's he plays on ice. He does 55. Could be also be a little bit like, I've always done this. I'm not going to change now. But then you have guys that are really open to playing around with strings, even try new strings, try a hybrid, or they're maybe lost in that jungle of like, what is my gear?
Yeah. But it's crazy. It's everything from the temperature to the ball you use to the altitude that players nowadays are adjusting their strings to, just to take into account all the different variables and try to adjust to keep their game, or at least what they can control, as similar as possible.
Yeah, no, you need to obviously control everything you can, and I think it's since tennis is becoming a game of more and more narrow margins. People obviously want, like, they look at gear more, they look at nutrition more, they look at like my preparation more, warm up. Can I bring in another coach? Should I work more on my mental game? So everything is suddenly incremental. Before maybe you had like McEnroe and Borg, they snort coke and then they go on the tennis court, try to play.
Yeah.
It was different, right?
It was. But yeah, again, like it's so nice to see the behind the scenes, even the stringing team. It's crazy how these guys, we talk so much about the players, but the stringers, they are there from 8 a.m. to the last match, which can be midnight, 1 a.m. So again, huge respect to them, and that's something that the general public doesn't see on TV, is how many hours they spend behind the scenes, and they're stringing every racket. And for them, it's about consistency. Every single racket has to be strung the exact same way, so that the player can perform as they would like to.
Yeah, I think that it's a lot of like things going into a tennis tournament. When you go into these ATP tournaments, WTA tournaments, you need like ball boys or girls, you need umpires, you need the linesmen, and the stringing team is just behind there. Hopefully they're in a good space. Sometimes they're in a tent somewhere, not even seeing the part of the tennis.
Yeah.
And then you have all the catering and all that stuff that goes on. It's like a huge thing to just get this thing on the ground. So you definitely want it to be a good vibe and atmosphere and good crowds and so on. So when you're moving around there, you're like walking around with sets of strings. You're just handing out to people, doing some marketing.
No, a little bit. Fortunately, I had friends there who were helping me out, but the priority for me was really to take in the experience. It's once in a lifetime, so that was a priority, just to enjoy, because not everyone has the opportunity to, and so it was all taking it in. It was enjoying it. That's why, honestly, for my tennis Instagram account, I didn't take too many videos of myself. I just had friends take videos of me, because, my priority was live it in the moment, live that week, enjoy it, and try to take it in.
I think that's a good advice in general in life. Like nowadays, everybody is seeing everything through their phone, right? So they go and watch their kids. They see it through their rectangle of their iPhone or whatever.
Yeah.
And they don't actually there. I think that's a general problem we all have. Like we're always distracted or in some other space, even when we're supposed to be like, okay, this is great. Like this is an amazing experience. Just breathe and take it in. But then the phone is always in the way. I have to capture it because I'm going to look at this later, which you rarely do tend to.
Yeah. So for me, that was a priority. Honestly, blocking off all distractions and taking it in, because it's really nice. And that's one of the good things about the Citi Open, is that it's small. Like it's a big in terms of ATP wise. 500 for ATP WTA is a good sized tournament. So you have players that come, but the tournament site, because it's small, you have access to. You can be a couple meters away from the players when they practice and even when they play matches. So because you're so close. That to me makes it such a unique environment. Usually, even now, with the US Open going on, it's so big. There's so many players that it's not the same. So I do prefer a little bit of these smaller tournaments where you get to be closer to those competing.
Yeah, I always felt like when I go to Grand Slams, like it's an amazing experience, but you get further away from the action. And even if you have like, we're lucky to be in Paris and watch Alcaraz like from almost the ground, but still it's further away than if you go to like Stuttgart, where I usually go, or like to smaller tournaments like a WTA 125, ATP 250, or even this, which is a little bit more boutique 500. Then you get, and also I think players enjoy it as well. That it's kind of like you can be in a hotel close to the venue, hopefully, and just like everything is closer and more accessible. Closer,
and then it's in a way less distractions, because even though it says it's in DC, it's actually a little bit farther up north. So where the tournament is played is in a public park. So it's pretty calm. There isn't much noise, so I think all of it adds up together, and that's why I think it's a really nice tournament overall.
I hope to go. I've never been. Like I didn't go when I was in DC either because I was
Next
always
year,
working.
Jonas, I'll be here. Whenever you want to come, my arms will be open to receive you.
Yeah. Yeah, so and you're doing your Instagram account. I didn't mention that. I will link that below as well, like where you post like your own stuff, but you also post some other stuff as well. Like how much time do you put on that in a week with all your work and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so I started that account a while ago. I was doing an internship in between my junior and senior year of college, and I was in a town where there was nothing. So uploaded one video, didn't do much for 3-4 months, uploaded one more, and then slowly it started becoming a bit more consistent, and it's been good. When I was living, 2 years ago in 2021, I was living in a city where there was absolutely nothing. So that gave me a lot of time to focus on tennis. I enjoy it, it keeps me accountable as well. If I have to, if I haven't posted something in a week or two, it keeps me accountable to go to the gym, to go on court, to practice footwork, to practice some sort of exercise. I'd say now on a weekly basis, unfortunately not dedicating that much time to it, maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour, not more than that. But before 2021, maybe last year, I would be dedicating maybe an hour, closer to 2 on a weekly basis.
Cool. No. I mean, it can be like we always get this. If you have an iPhone, I don't know how it works on Android, but it's like you always get this, like your time spent on the phone, and you always get like, what am I doing with my life? And I'm not trying to spend too much time, but just like a lot of people message you via Instagram, even people you have on WhatsApp. So it's like WhatsApp, Instagram, maybe you have other messaging services, and maybe you watch something on YouTube. I use it for podcasts a lot, what I listen to. So then you get like scared, like, what is this? Like, it shouldn't be this much. Again, I'm not really that bad, but then like that's it's usually a scary thing to talk about with your friends. Like, how much is your screen time? And it can be quite.
No, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous topic. So yeah, but honestly, it's I've enjoyed it. Like it's been amazing. The tennis fitness account. I've met a lot of people. I've made so many nice connections, and I think that's what the tennis community provides you. Is it's small in a way. It's very large, but it's small. You know a few people, and you know a lot of the community. So for me, the connections that I've made through that account in the past 4 years that I've had it, which is a while, very thankful for that.
Sure, it's been great, and you're also like establishing your string business, so and tennis business in general. So if we get into that, like, okay, you went to college. We can even start there. Like, and did you do tennis in college, or what was your major?
Yeah, major was economics and finance. That's what I studied with a minor in accounting. So very finance oriented. I played freshman year, my full year. Sophomore, I studied abroad in the fall, so I only played in the spring. Junior, I didn't play. And then senior year was the pandemic, so the tennis season was just the fall season for me. So my college tennis was a bit unique. I only had one full season, which was my first. And then the rest were all half seasons.
Yeah, I mean, like doing anything during like the pandemic is obviously making everything like chopped into pieces. Did that disrupt your whole experience of college, or did you still have a great time? Like,
no, I did. Honestly, great time. I had a really nice community. I lived with my last 2 years. I lived with 6 other guys, so it was overall great to it was a nice brotherhood that we built. I do feel like, in a way, I never graduated since the pandemic was that last semester. I had no graduation, so it still feels like part of me is still in college. I don't feel that old just yet.
You're quite young, guys, so don't worry about that. Don't worry about age. I don't worry about age, so you shouldn't, right? But, no, that's amazing. I mean, it's like, and you would probably, just by listening to you, would recommend other people to go to college, even if they want to be a tennis pro, for example.
Yeah, no, for sure. College is a great route. I mean, you have, again, lots of levels. You have amazing Division I schools where you have athletes that can play on the tour and can be top 400, top 500 with no problem. And then you have lower levels as well, where you have kids that are, picking up tennis have picked up 2-3 years ago. But there's still, that hunger for them to compete. So you have a ton of level in college tennis. But I think it's a great route, especially for those that want to go into the pro tour and they're still developing themselves. If they can get, in a way, a full scholarship or a very strong one, it's free tennis. You get free rackets, shoes, clothes, gear, tennis balls, strings. It's a very expensive sport. So for those that are coming with, families who aren't as wealthy as others, I think it's a really good route for them to sort of have free practice in a way, get schooling with an education, which is should be the priority in a way, before they try to go on tour.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And also you have that backup in case tennis doesn't work out. I mean, tennis is tough. Like, there's so many people who want to go pro that put so much money and time and effort into it.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't really add up because it's like hard to make money with tennis, even if you're a super talented player.
It is. And I think slowly ATP is doing a good job into that. Instead of giving the top guys more, feeding that income, distributing it into those ranked in the 100s, 200s, or even 300s. But the college system is now, I don't know if you've seen it, but they've partnered with the ATP, where I don't know the logistics, the specifics, but if you end up, for example, in the top 20, top 10 singles rankings, you get wildcards into 5 or 8 challengers throughout the year. So I think that's a great program because it gives college students, they know they have the level, and it gives them the opportunity to compete at very high levels without having to go through the entire Futures Tour. They gave them the opportunity to start at the Challenger and see what they can do from there. Yeah,
I think to have kind of a connection where you incentivize and inspire people, like that's the thing, because with all these stories you hear about, like, okay, it's tough to make it, tennis is such a financially difficult sport, like it's costly, whatever.
Yeah.
That you have some hope of some other road into the pro life, I think is good. But because tennis is very rewarding as well, so we shouldn't just hash tennis. But it's just it's quite a complex situation financially if you're not from a wealthy family, right?
Yeah. So I think there are opportunities that are slowly coming in, and I think at the moment they've been very good for the sport. So it's really nice to see that.
So how long does it take before we see a Restring 0 on the ATP Tour?
It might be a while. It's been a very nice project, honestly. It's been 11 months since 0 has launched. So 1 year anniversary is next week, actually. So very happy for that. Very happy that the feedback from the majority of the players has been positive. So, and yeah, it's been a very nice year. It's gone much better than I thought it would for the first year or so. So again, made great connections. The positive feedback, the messages that we get from fellow players really helps a lot with regards to motivation. It helps a lot to reinvest in the brand and help Restring grow.
Yeah, and it's like you're two founders. So how did it start? Like you, obviously people want to start something in tennis if tennis is their passion. But it's quite difficult. Like it's not an easy, especially going into rackets is a big headache. But also strings, it's a lot of competition. Where do you, where do you have your USP, like your unique selling point? So how did that process turn out for you?
Yeah, I mean it's a complex story. I can start with the origins really. So Nick and I, we met when we were 12, 13 years old. We met in middle school, 6th grade, around there. We both grew up in Tokyo. So that's where we met. We did pretty much the entire middle school, high school together. And then when we went to college, I came to the US. He went to Europe. And, always stayed in touch. We're pretty much brothers. We've stayed in touch. We talk every other day in a way. And the idea came about in 2020. During the pandemic, we had time. And one of our biggest areas of concern in a way was that tennis is a wasteful sport. You use a can of balls once, maybe twice. Pros use them for 20 minutes, and you waste them. Strings as well. You use them once, you waste them. You can say the same for shoes. I'm using a pair of shoes a month, in a way. You use them once, you waste them. So the idea was, how can we reimagine what a tennis brand, what a tennis string can look like, so that we maintain the performance to the peak, but we also think about the environment and we give back at the same time. So that's where the fusion of the two, that idea came about. And yeah, it all started in 2020. It took about 2 years or so, 2.5 years to get 0 launched, manufactured. So it was really interesting. I've learned so much throughout the way, not just, because, I've studied finance, as I mentioned, but I've learned a lot through the manufacturing side, logistics, supply chain, fulfillment, a bit of marketing. So it's really nice that I've gotten sort of a well-rounded, in a way, knowledge the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's obviously a process to start a company and create a product, and now you have to deal with all the logistics, as you said, which is a hassle. Even talking to guys like Irakli, for example, dealing with customers all over the world that want returns or happy or not happy, whatever. So that's always a challenge. And I played the string. I really like the string. I like what you did with it. It worked well for me, and I've also handed it out to a lot of other players around here, and it's been a positive experience for I would say all of them. So great work, and now you're working on another string as well, right?
Now we're slowly developing string number 2. The idea came about earlier in the year, around late spring, early summer. We thought, okay, fortunately the feedback's been positive so far with Zero, so we have the time, we have the will, the energy as well to try to create our second string. So the idea is to launch late summer if we can, for it to be a little bit different than Zero, different color, different shape, different playability. But why I say it will be a little bit similar is that the best features, in a way, meaning the snapback durability mainly, and the tension maintenance, we would like that to maintain. So again, a lot of learning throughout the way. That's the goal for next year. Again, really, really enjoying it, and it's been very nice as well working with, in a way, a brother that I've known for so long. There's a lot of trust between us, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I was going to ask that because like working with anyone is obviously a challenge, right? It's like you have to find what are you going to do? How do you, line up the work so it suits your skills and his skills, and how do you, structure your workload like in between you two guys?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and fortunately we're very similar, but we're also very different in our working styles. Nick is much more on the brand building, futuristic side of what can Restring look like in a few years, and I'm more detailed. So I'm in day to day, whether it's the analytics, whether everything for me is I need to be in the weeds. So fortunately, just how we are naturally, how our personalities and our ways of working are, we collaborate really well together because of that. So organically, the work, honestly, without even communicating, we know whose is what, with how we think and how our ways of working are.
Yeah, I think that's important. And when you have a partner that you're kind of aligned and that you're naturally slot into your tasks, so there's not crazy overlap where you like argue about, I want to do this, and the other one wants to do this, and it's like, it becomes like an argument for nothing, right? So
yeah. So fortunately, we get really well along together. I know his family, he knows my family since we were little kids. So there's a lot of trust, as I said, between us, and fortunately, we work really well together.
That's great. That's great. So Tokyo, how did you end up in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, so my family moved to Japan when I was 9, and we stayed there through when I graduated high school, so 18, so it was 9 years there. And then near the end of those years, the idea was, okay, where do I go to college? The thought was always to go back to Argentina. That's where my family is. That's where I'm from as well. So that was always the idea. Go back to Argentina. College is free. So that was the whole process. But then in my last 2 years, fortunately, my dad applied to a job in the US. He got it, and then we all moved here. So that's what came about, and it came just on time with me graduating high school, moving into college. So I came to a university that is relatively close to DC, about a 4-hour drive or so away. So that was the main reason as to why I came here instead of going to school in Argentina.
What's the name of the university?
Lynchburg is what it's called.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to Shenandoah.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned that. They're in the same conference, which is crazy. So if only I had gone to school a couple years earlier, we would have been in the same league.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been fun. No, but that's an amazing story, and I guess you have strong future plans of the brand and so on. How does your daily life look like? How much tennis do you play do you play every day? Do you coach? How does your structure for your life?
It's changed a lot in the past year. I still have my regular full-time job. That won't change at the moment.
That's finance, right?
In finance, yeah, in the finance industry. So that will not change. Last year, for example, I used to do a lot of coaching, but then as Restring launched and fortunately work picked up, I stopped the coaching on the weekends. But on a day-to-day, usually wake up around 6 or so a.m., try to get an hour or so of work in for Restring, head into the office, I'll get back home around 7-ish, and then I try to do an hour or so of exercise on the daily. So whether it's tennis, whether it's the gym, running, and I'll do that. And then at nighttime, try to squeeze another 2 or 3 hours or so before heading to bed. So that's on an average, on a day-to-day, what it looks like.
Yeah, so lots of partying and
Yeah. So, no. Yeah, I did have to miss one on a friend's birthday on Saturday, again because of Restring. So I mean, it's good. Sometimes you have to be home and work, but again, I'm learning so much. I enjoy the process, and as long as I get something out of this experience, I'm very grateful for it, and I'm giving it my 100%.
No, I 100% agree with this. I mean, like it's you're putting your work into your passion, and so that's worth a lot. So I think it's great to hear, and also it's just how about finding a balance where you also get some rest time, obviously. But I think for myself and for I guess many people who are quite ambitious, I think that gym time or going for a long walk or run, like we talked about running before we went on air. Or that hour of tennis, 2 hours of tennis is just like a great meditation almost. You feel afterwards, you feel like you let a lot of stress out if you have anything pent up, right?
It's critical. It's critical. For me, the time that you spend in a way outside exercising, for me is what makes my day. Even if it's an hour, during the weekdays, I will spend that hour and I will take priority over that. Versus anything. So of course on the weekends, sometimes I get desperate, and if I have to play 6 hours of tennis, I will play the 6 hours. It's tough to get me off the court, but like as you said, the time you spend exercising for you, kind of like me, is critical because you also relax the mind, you de-stress, you're not thinking about anything. So it's important.
Yeah, for sure, and it's very, very important. When it comes to exercise, we talked about running before, and is it something you're getting into more and more? You said like you did 8K today, or what?
Yeah, yes, it's peer pressure from the friends. They're all on Strava, the running app. So I've had
Okay.
Nick, for example. He's a big runner. He's on Strava. But no, I have this one of my friends. He's biking from the coast or the border between the U.S. and Canada to Chile. He's doing 150 kilometers a day, for example. So there are these. I do have a couple of friends that are crazy, that go all out, but yeah, it's a bit of peer pressure to get on Strava and try to lock in the kilometers and run for a bit each week.
Well, that's positive peer pressure. It's not like chugging beers.
No,
It's actually like doing something good.
Yeah, no, for sure. But it's good. It's healthy competition as well. You're doing it you're doing it to compete to see who can run the most, which is nice. On the run yesterday, it was 4 of us that went. So it's nice to get a group of guys to go running, spend some time together. You talk during that chat or during that run. So it helps a lot sort of do different things together, not just hang out during nighttime and go to parties.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And it's like very constructive, obviously, good for the body, good for the mind. Most of all, I think people sometimes underestimate how good exercise is also for your mind. Like it's you exercise both, the body and the mind. And obviously, if you have friends, it's a social thing as well. So as is tennis, like tennis is such a social sport. Maybe we should have a Strava for tennis. We have to think of a good app.
Hey, I like that. Logging in how many hours a week are you on the court hitting balls? That could be nice.
Yeah, it could be good. Maybe find some like a way to gamify the number of drills you do and stuff like that. I think that could be a good thing to incentivize more tennis and not so much pickleball.
And then you create the community around it, which is, I think, the best part about the tennis world is the community. We spoke about it when we met up, earlier in Marbella in June. But the tennis community is great. It's very supportive, and you get to know people well and quickly. My best connections have come through tennis, to be honest. So it's 10 out of 10 in terms of the community, and yeah, that's why I think it could be good. We launched the app, we strengthened the community.
Yeah, I noticed. I mean, that was the whole idea when I came from business world as well, like marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
And when I came over to working more and more towards tennis, I noticed that community feel which I had. Like when you grow up as a kid, you play sports and stuff. You really like the community aspects. You meet friends. You get along with people. And that's so important. And I think that's also the whole idea behind Tennis Nerd was like that it's a thing that people would like to wear as a badge of honor. Like, I'm a tennis nerd. It's something you can say, meaning nerd in a positive context, which is kind of a more of a positive word these days than it was when I grew up. but
Yeah.
it's like, you take the pride in your passion, and that's really important. And in tennis, I think it exists quite strongly, which is
Yeah,
great.
for sure, for sure. No, I completely agree.
When it comes to watching any tennis, have you? I mean, you watched some really good live action in the DC, I guess, right? So that's one thing. But have you watched any TV tennis?
Yeah, for me, it's mainly the highlights. I can't. That's one of the pros and cons of tennis is that matches are long, which is good. So if you can't catch the first hour, you know that there'll be another one. But sometimes they go on for too long. So for me, it's tough sometimes to sit down and watch an entire match. So I mainly focus on highlights, catch up on the reels, see what matches have been played, won and lost. So I try to stay up to date with what's going on the ATP and WTA tour. But as the years have gone by, I've spent less time watching the matches and more time looking at results and just the highlights.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting situation. I mean, like there are some 5-set matches, which is like great movie, Oppenheimer, whatever you want to watch for 3 hours, and then there are many matches that are not maybe great movies. And I discuss this topic with a lot of people, obviously on the podcast. It's like, should we do something to tennis to shorten the matches or change the format a bit, or should we just let tennis be what it is and be like this kind of Joe Rogan 3-hour podcast? But tennis is also, you can't really passively watch it. Like a podcast, I can listen to a podcast when I clean my house, right? That's fine. But you can't watch a tennis match while you clean your house because you're going to not see a lot of tennis or not get a very clean house. So it's that's very hard to get into that. And then you will obviously the key moments are the important points. Like you want to see the juices when it's 5-all, right? That's when I want to tune in. I'm like, okay, it's a tie break. First set, that's going to settle a lot of how the match moves. That's when I want to watch it, So do you have any ideas there?
It's an interesting topic, as the generations goes on, especially with how technology has developed, the attention span is much shorter. And, when you look at the younger generation, none of them watch a full tennis match. Unless you have tennis nerds, tennis fanatics, young, teenagers. But the majority, not really. So it's an interesting topic because, again, you do have, like you mentioned, 5-set matches like the Wimbledon final or even the Western and Southern Open final between Djokovic and Alcaraz. You have matches like that where it's great that they're long because, you get to watch great tennis, quality tennis for longer. But then you have other matches where, it's the attention span of someone watching that match might be shorter. So it's definitely an interesting topic. I don't know enough to comment or to suggest changes, to be honest, but it's definitely one up for debate. I think UTS, the Ultimate Tennis Showdown, has been an interesting sort of tangent that they've thrown in. Different point systems. You have cards that you throw a point is worth twice, or you just have a second serve. Things like that are nice because it's not monotonous. You have things that come in and out, different points, different games, which I think is a nice variety. I don't know if that can be the new tennis. It's difficult to see it that way, but I think it's nice that you do have different varieties, whether it's the Laver Cup, the Davis Cup. I think it's nice that you have things throughout the year that change the rhythm a bit of how the tennis goes.
I agree. I think being able to experiment a bit with shorter formats like they do in the next gen with the four game sets, 5 sets, of course, but at least up to 4 games, pretty quick. And maybe we can remove some of these elements, which the lets, for example, on the serve. I mean, potentially you can keep some Grand Slams, the last 3 rounds of Grand Slams, the same because of history and whatever. But maybe for ATP 250s, WTA 125s, whatever, you can be a bit more free with experimentation because the rules will apply for everyone, right? So it's the same rules. It's just that people need to adjust a bit. Yeah,
no, it's definitely interesting. I'm curious to see what will happen. I think the priority now for the ATP WTA is sort of the distribution of what we talked about before, the distribution of income in a way, because you want to have tennis be as accessible as possible to the largest number of quality players so that they could bring new personalities, new play styles. And I think that I agree that should be the priority. Then how tennis is played and all the other ifs and buts around it, I think will be an interesting conversation to see how tennis develops, because you have other sports like pickleball, for example, or even paddle, which in Europe and in Argentina is extremely popular, that I love as well, that compete and can take a bit of the market share away.
Yeah, no, it's true. Pickleball matches, they're quite a bit shorter, right? So that's
I don't
plus.
watch, so I no clue. I just know that a couple pointers here and there, but the noise bothers me a bit too much.
Yeah, no, I'm not like I'm a fan in people exercising. I'm not sure it deserves all the hype it gets. Like that's my question mark. Like I think it's a little bit silly, but I also rather have people do that. It's just like it's in my mind it's overhyped.
Yeah,
You
no,
know?
it's crazy if how much popularity it has. If you go to any park here, you have 4 pickleball courts, 2, 3 tennis courts. The pickleball courts are full with a line, and the tennis courts are empty or they're being taken over by the pickleball players. So it's the popularity is definitely present, and yeah, it's in a way It's unfortunate to see that there's more pickleball players on court than there are tennis players.
Yeah, it's an accessibility thing. Like it's easy. You hardly sweat. Like I've seen people drink beer while they play pickleball, which is not the athlete's mind maybe. And tennis is tough, right? But there are maybe different ways to mitigate. Like you can use green dot balls maybe for the weaker players. You can play more doubles maybe potentially at least up to a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, but the best thing about pickleball is that it's accessible. If you take an hour, 2, 3 hours of pickleball lessons, you're good to go. You can play, you can compete, and I think that's what catches the eyes of people, and especially the elder, because there's less movement, there's less pressure on the joints. It's easier for you to get to the ball. When you have older people playing tennis, it's all moon balls. They can only take 2, 3 steps one way or the other. It's different. So I definitely get the appeal from their perspective. So it's definitely interesting. I hope that tennis can maintain and not get taken over by at least the courts by the pickleball players.
Yeah. I think we need to protect tennis, but we can just like applaud if the other sports do well. But
Yeah.
we just keep tennis going because tennis is doing better than people think. I think people have this perception that tennis is doing badly, but has
No,
been
no,
growing since the pandemic. So I think
it
tennis
has.
is still a very popular sport, like one of the top 5 sports in the world. So
For sure, and then having young athletes that are extremely well at the top of the world ranking and will be there for the next 5, 10 years I think is great because that you'll maintain sort of the longevity of the sport, and that's a player people can follow for some time.
yeah, for sure. No, I mean like Alcaraz and these guys, like they are
Right.
exciting enough to be a good substitute for. I mean, it's hard to say substitute, but like Rafa and Roger, Rafa soon retires. Roger already retired. Novak at some point will stop winning slams and
Yeah.
retire. We're not really in a bad spot with the current crop of players, which is a
Yeah.
good feeling, right?
No, for sure, for sure. So I think that's good. How the tennis is left or how the next couple of years will go is very important.
Yeah, yeah. And what happens? Like, and then maybe that there needs to be room for some experimentation in the coming years and see what we can do to make sure it also stays like a fascinating sport to watch. So it's like it's not because if you see the numbers drop in how people stream matches or. Because I think there's a point to be made with the highlights, which I talked to with Nikola Racic from Intuitive Tennis, a smart guy, and he's like, he doesn't think for tennis IQ, it's not so good to watch highlights, like because like you're not learning anything from the match. You just
Not at all.
like this point was good, this point was good. It says nothing about the story arc of the match, like who was going straight out of the gates with 3-0, and then he had like got yips on his serve, and now it's that's the storyline in tennis is quite interesting, right? So I think you lose a bit of that, but at least you get a gist of what happened, so you get like an idea of it.
Yeah, it is for sure, and that's one of the pros and cons of tennis is that when matches do go on for long periods of time, you have so many shifts in momentum, so many shifts in what happens to an individual player. Like you said, the yips on the serves that might last 2 service games, and then they're back. Or they might have 10, 15 minutes where they're seeing the ball this big and they go out of the park. So I think that's one of the pros and cons. The matches get long, but you learn a lot. You can see a lot from the players. If you pay attention, you can see the shifts in momentum and the reason and the why behind those shifts have happened.
I have a great idea now. I pat myself on the back. It would be good for highlights if you had a smart guy or girl or two, but like this is a one-man job maybe. Sit down and narrate the storyline of the match, right? So it's like you talk through it like a little bit of a short movie. You say, all right, but then Djokovic, he was very nervous. He started like this, so you kind of capture the key points. not only the highlights. So you also talk through what happened in this match. You break it down maybe in like, it could be a 10-minute clip, but it's broken down in the key elements of the match in an engaging way. So the storyline stays, but you see like the key points, and you get that whole, like, it's like an episode of series. I think that could be a good way to do it.
Definitely, and you have the analytics of sports, especially in tennis now. It's becoming so much more, in a way, analytics based. Have you heard of Craig O'Shaughnessy, for example?
Of course.
So I mean, he took pretty much the idea of Moneyball in baseball and in a way gave it to tennis, and that's how sort of the analytics behind the sport came about. And I think even now, like if you go on the ATP website, you can see IBM that has an analysis after each match. You can see percentage of first or second serves, and then you can dive in. How many slices cross court, slices down the line, how did they serve on each side for set 1, set 2, set 3. All of that I think is important and can help narrate the story that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think using data in a good way of making the product more appealing is important. I think they do it well in other American sports, at least better than in tennis. Tennis has been kind of very, like, we know serve speed, and like unforced errors has always been measured in a slightly strange way, right? Like, what is an unforced error? And it used to be like a human who was like, that's an unforced error, that's not an unforced error. But now you can actually program algorithms to be like quite smart about it and say, hey, the reason X, Y, Z won the match is because of these key points, and then what he did there, and it can actually analyze everything, like meters run and everything, right? So
yeah. Which I think it'll be nice to see the more it becomes involved in the sport.
Have you been watching any US Open? Like, is that been on your agenda? Like, it's I know you're at work or you're working, but it started just a few hours ago, I think, right?
Yeah, today day one of the main draw. I'm excited. It's a good tournament. The best part about it is the time zone, so you get to see matches during the evening when you come home from work, or because if not, usually you're in the mornings, especially with tournaments in Europe. I'm in the mornings. That's when I check all the results. So with the time zone, it's great. I'm excited to see how it goes. What are your predictions, by the way? Who do you think can take it on both sides?
I even did this bracket challenge where I invited a bunch of people. So it's a challenge. Like, so if you're in the States, you can actually win $1 million, right?
Oh, I filled it out actually as well.
You should join the Tennis Nerd group so we can keep track of everyone. It's like a leaderboard.
I'll join it.
I think it's like 30, 40 people. So 30 people maybe.
Nice.
So that's fun. No, but it's already there's been so many upsets. Like what I just saw now, like this evening, I was like, okay, Ruud lost, team beat Bublik. So there were already 2 upsets. Sakarishi is out as well, right?
Yeah. So who did you have, by the way, to win on both sides?
I put Novak to win. I think he's super motivated. Like after beating Alcaraz. Like I'm an Alcaraz fan, as I told you before, but I think Novak is too strong at this point. Like I think he really wants to win US Open. I think it eluded him a few times now. So it's like he's...
Yeah, I did the same thing. On the men's side, I picked Djokovic, and on the women's, I picked Goff. She's been having a really good hard court summer season, especially since Brad Gilbert joined her team after Wimbledon. So I think she's got a lot of momentum. Favorable draw as well, now that Sakari's out. Outside of Iga, I think she can go quite far.
Yeah, I picked her and Pegula to go far, but in the end I went with Pegula. I don't know, some gut feeling, but she's also playing well. But I think Goff is maybe the most improved. They had this discussion, like, should they change? It's a thing about her forehand, right? So Rick Macy was on my podcast, talked about how her forehand is her big weakness. He would like to work with her. This was before the Gilbert story came out.
Yeah.
And now Gilbert said he won't start changing her grip because she has a slightly weird grip on the forehand, right? So, and I think, it's not Brad Gilbert's thing to go and change technique. He was never like a technical whiz. He's very good with the mental, like winning matches from anywhere really, right? Like even if you're a weaker player or whatever.
No, that's really interesting. No, but I'm excited to see how the US Open goes, especially with the night matches. Those always get pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a crazy vibe. Like I've never been to the US Open, so I hope next year that's the plan to go, for sure. I wanted to go this year, but I was too late in applying for the press credentials, like where you can actually go in and out and have like press room seat. That would be perfect for me. I had that.
Yeah.
I had that before, but it seems like a great event. Did you go ever?
Yeah.
It was funny. I think Bublik had said there was a translation from Russian. I really maybe shouldn't be repeating, but it's like he said, I'm always helping these he said cripples or disabled people come back to tennis, like come back person. I was like,
And he always gets the guys coming back from injuries.
yeah. He
Oh,
said
that's,
disabled people, which I
yeah,
think he will get some fire from. But like when
probably.
you're in the heat of the moment, like you know how frustrating tennis is. It's like one of the most frustrating sports you can play. So you can say stupid stuff. Like I've never said anything that stupid, but I haven't played on that level either. So
But yeah, you hear it from time to time, though. You hear it. You know from who.
yeah. No, I've been in like I was I was in Nick's box during the Stuttgart last year, and
Yeah.
he was sputtering out some stuff that you couldn't tell kids, right? It
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
like,
You keep it PG, PG.
yeah, PGA for sure. So how's your own tennis going? Like you were aspiring pro, I would say, right? That was your plan, or
I don't think, I mean, of course, when I was a kid, great. Yeah, would love to go pro or whatever. But, as I got older, for me, the priority was always to go to school. So the pro career really never was an option. To be honest, I played maybe one ITF qualifying event when I was 16 in Japan, but that was it. And also, living in an island, you have to travel a lot, take flights to go anywhere. So it really wasn't that feasible. I still love playing tennis. If I can play, I usually play between 6 hours, around 6 hours a week, and then love the whole fitness aspect of it, and love competing. Thing is, finding tournaments and everything is a bit tougher now with work, but yeah, I still have that competitive edge and love to practice and everything with the idea of I can continue to improve every time I step on the court.
yeah, and that's great. No, I mean you're a really good player. I hit with you in Marbella, and you hit really well. I play with futures players as well, and like you're on that level. So for sure, it's like some
Yeah.
you
Thank
maintain
you.
it well. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
the mind is where I start to lose things. People, now are beginning to talk a bit more about the mental side of tennis, but I think that's where my biggest area of improvement is. Physically, I think I'm okay, but well, could be better, but I'm okay. But on the mental side, I'm a mess. I'm a mess, especially if you don't play matches repetitively and get into those pressure moments. It's when you get into it for the first time again after a while. Nerves kick in, you don't make the right decisions as you would have if the point was 15 love versus deuce or 30 all. So I think that for me is the biggest gap is definitely on the mental side. Just not being used to playing matches, honestly.
I think that is huge, and on any level, right? Like you need that muscle train, right? So you know like how to not tighten up too much, how to react at 4-4, 30 all, third
Yeah.
set, whatever. Like these types of pressure moments, you need to handle them well, and people like I think the emphasis on mental tennis has been more and more and more every year now. I mean, Swiatek, she's kind of famous for bringing in like a mental trainer. Obviously,
Yeah.
the top guys they have some kind of training mentally. Federer worked with one guy early in his career. I think maybe to go from he was kind of like a really angry on court, and now then he was like a saint for his whole career. Like he
Yeah.
remained. I mean, he broke one racket against Novak in 2009, but it's like such controlled, calm behavior, and and obviously Rafa as well, always keeping it pretty chill. Novak can show a little bit
Yeah.
more. But they are mental beasts. Yeah. Like it's just impressive how they keep playing at the top level in these pressure moments over and over again.
Yeah, and it's interesting during the Citi Open while I was there with Fernandez. While she was taking breaks, I was talking with her dad. Her dad's from Ecuador, so immediately started speaking Spanish, started speaking about soccer, or football, and the conversation kicked off. And I started asking them a bit more detailed questions about her tennis. What do they do? What does training blocks look like? What times during the year do they put a bit more focus on the physical side of tennis? And one of the questions that I asked was about the mental side. How much they train mental tennis on a week, day-to-day basis. And they said that, every day they at least put in, an allocated amount of time to focus on her mental side. Because she's one of those players that consistently has a poker face, doesn't show too many emotions, whether the match is going good or bad. She's very in the moment. And that was interesting to learn a bit about, what does that look like from a professional tennis player standpoint. So, I agree. There's a lot of emphasis nowadays being put more on the mental side of even what goes on the court.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I think it's so important in any sport, in life in general, that you learn the tools. Like, I mean, it's there's so many guys and girls that go bonkers on the tennis court, and they kind of like leave a mess after them, like, and they are a mess afterwards because they. I mean, it's such tennis. You're alone on the court. It's like a gladiator sport, but with rackets and balls, right? So, kind of UFC on the court, right? And with the net in between, and it's like so much emotion in it. Money in some case. I mean, if you play professional tennis, there's money, a lot of money to win or lose one match. It's a big difference, especially in a Grand Slam or something. So you got to give them a lot of credit for doing that. But then to make sure you maintain, you have to kind of do it all the time, I think. I think there is a lot of potential lost for players who have not done the work. You know, like they could have maybe worked with a mental trainer or on their mental strength earlier in their career, but they just didn't put in the effort, or it wasn't maybe a topic back then, you know.
Yeah, and when you interview or when pro players get interviewed, what's the biggest difference? You know, those that make the jump between the top, 150 to 100, top 50, what's that difference? And they said it's playing the right points at the right time, and it's all big portion of it is due to the mental side of the sport, is making the right decision, because one shot can really change a point, which can change a game, a set, a match, and maybe a tournament.
True, and I've seen it. Like, I think it's also getting a bit better on the WTA tour. For a while, it was like just big hitters trying to out hit their nervousness almost. It's like, if I go big on every shot, I don't have time to be nervous or tight, because I'm always loose. I'm always going for it, and it's more of a hit or miss. And some days I miss, some days I make it. But you see players like Leila, for example, or Iga. They play smart tennis. They play more open up angles, go to the net, play the points a bit smarter, always keep fighting, a lot of like fist bumps and stuff. So it's becoming more similar to the ATP, I would say, in that sense. Like they're using more topspin, and they're using more strategy in their game, which wasn't so common maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. No, I completely agree with that. It's interesting to see as well.
So what happens in your head when you were playing tennis? Do you get too hard on yourself, or do you feel like just very tight, so your muscles tense up, or is it a mix of everything?
A mixer. I like short points. So if the points can be 2-3 shots, I'm good to go. As soon as the points start to get a little bit long, mentally I check out. That was what I did, since I was young. In a way, I'm more like what you mentioned tennis was before: big hitters, big shots, and that was it. That's still how my tennis is today. Try to change it a little bit, but no, it's, for me, my weakest point is the longevity of the points. The longer they go, the weaker I get mentally, honestly. So I think that's a bit of lack of playing tournaments for a couple of years, for 2-3 years now, and not being able to train that consistently. Hitting wise, I think I'm doing okay, but it's that mental side that I just don't practice really often.
Did you look into like reading books, or what did you go into that topic more?
No, to be honest, I mean, yeah, I've read books, I've watched some YouTube videos, to learn on how to improve that side. But to be honest, I never really thought my tennis could go. I want to get better, but I never thought I could be great. So in a way, that's where it ended for me.
And it's also good to know your limitation, and also sometimes it's good to be self-aware enough to say, hey, I'm not seeing myself as top 10 ATP, or even like hacking it out around 300. I'd rather go for like a regular like profession, and do something with tennis on the side, like with, for example, you're doing now with the tennis brand like Restring and the Zero String and other strings coming. So I think it's good to have that self-awareness. I think also there's players who go maybe too long, who stay in the career too long and don't have a backup, and then it becomes like they become like reluctant tennis coaches, which is not the best tennis coach when you're a reluctant tennis coach. Like, you want the tennis coach to be someone that's like, I really want to help people get better at tennis or understand tennis better. But you see some players that go there and they're like tennis coaches because there are no other jobs that fits their CV or their life, right?
Yeah, but pros and cons. Some people do enjoy that tennis route and being stuck to tennis their whole life, and others, like you said, they'll call it quits early. They'll realize that maybe this career path isn't for them, and they'll decide to go on a different one.
You're using your own string, obviously, and I like that one too. Like, how long was the development phase? Like, how many samples did you have to go through, like, to get to where you are today with the Restring Zero, the first string?
Yeah, a lot of samples, a lot of development. It's interesting. So one of the other good things between Nick and I is that we're quite different with our playing styles. Like I just explained, my play styles, I go big. I hit with a lot of spin. I tend to break strings close to an hour and a half, an hour and 15 of playing. Nick, on the other side, he needs soft strings, whereas I like stiffer. He needs soft strings. He's used to using hybrids. His game is a bit more flat compared to mine. So what's good is that because our styles are different, we combined those opposing poles of knowledge to create Zero. So we wanted, for example, for me, it was durability. That's the main thing. Have a string with good durability and tension maintenance, which is important because you have strings that, once you play with them for 30 minutes, an hour, the tension drops off quite quickly. So for me, those were the two key things, is to have the durability and the tension maintained throughout the life of the string. And then for Nick, it was more along the aspects of the power and the spin that you could generate with a hybrid. Depending on what you use, that might not be as accessible. So we combined sort of the two likings into one, and that's what Zero is, in a way. Both of our likings, we've hit with, I can't tell you how many strings, just because of finding the right one for me before creating Zero. And then now, same thing with the second string, is we have samples we're developing, because a lot of people don't know, but it's not just the shape that impacts how a string plays, but the color as well. That's something that isn't talked about too much. Strings of the same color tend to play in a similar way if they're shaped similarly. So those are things that we learned along the way, or at least I did, take into consideration. But yeah, definitely took a lot of hours, a lot of investment, a lot of samples as well to get sort of the best solution that we could, because we don't want to compromise on the performance at all of the string.
No, and if you're going to play with the string yourself as well, it makes sense. Like, obviously, you don't want to go and play with all the power when you have your own string brand. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So you want to have like something you really feel, this is what I believe in, this is a good product, I like playing with it, and it performs well, and then that's so much easier to sell something you believe in. I think it's generally in business, if you're selling some solution that it's not really, that it's like a multi-level marketing scheme, or it's just like a slightly off product, it can't be nice, it must be tough on the conscience.
I agree, and I think that's what comes in with when you test different strings. With every string, there's something that you'll like and something that you'll dislike. So, we took all those factors into account, and for us, for me at least, the durability and the tension maintenance were key things, and then again for Nick, it was the spin, the power, and with that comes the snapback. So fortunately, we managed to get all, if not the majority of those factors together, and we're really happy with Zero, how it plays. We're really happy with the feedback that we received. Fortunately, made some great connections in the past year, and people have been supportive, which is really nice. So if we can continue to give back and get involved in the tennis community, that'll make me just happy to continue moving forward.
Like you said, we talked about it earlier, like the tennis community is like this important part, like, and people are, especially tennis nerds in general, but it's like quite keen on testing new things. And also, I think if you see a story where there's smaller brands, like there's quite a few smaller brands, but in strings, but in rackets, there are not that many. And you generally see that feeling that people rather support the smaller operations than, if they can, like, then to go for the big dragons, which have huge marketing budgets and can endorse players. Because I think in tennis marketing, endorsing players is so important. Like, to get, a pro player to use your string, it's a huge achievement, but it's also like it probably requires quite a significant budget,
Yeah, and it's crazy, the visibility difference as well. If you sponsor, whether it's strings, rackets, clothes, if you sponsor a player that's top 200, still ridiculous level, but someone at the 200 mark and someone at the 50 mark or someone at the 20 mark, the visibility is crazy. You'll probably never, unfortunately, see on TV someone at the 200 mark unless they make it far in an ATP event. But since they don't show challengers, mainly on the TV, whether it's Tennis Channel or ESPN, you name it, it's just tough. So even though they play at a ridiculous level, uh, because they don't get that much visibility, it's tough to, from an investment side, it's tough for a brand to put in money for them, just because the visibility might not be there. So it's definitely an interesting topic within tennis. And I don't know if you saw, but earlier this year, that's what Nike did. They dropped a couple of the players that, even though they were ranked in the top 100, top 200, because of that visibility aspect, they're focusing on their top 10 guys, top 20, and that's where the majority of their marketing expenses is going towards.
Yeah, for the bigger brands, I think it's hard to motivate, like giving out even rackets. I mean, rackets, sometimes you need to maybe give out 400 or 500 in the world. I think that's usually where the cutoff is, when you want to give someone a free racket deal, you know, where they get rackets and strings maybe. But like, okay, they may be playing some challengers, a max, maybe, you know, a bunch of futures, obviously. But the visibility, as you say, like even on Challenger Tour, and I think the Challenger Tour has enough of a product that you could make it, you know, more easily available. Like Tennis TV, I think, could, for example, have the Challenger Tour there as well. But instead, they have the Challenger Tour separately, where you can stream it on the ATP Tour website. I don't know if you can stream everything. I don't think so. But I've watched some streams there, and it's fine, you know. But it's obviously not maybe the glamorous courts. Depends a bit how big the Challenger is, how funded it is, and so on. But the tennis is, of course, of good level, you know. And this is maybe where we come into a point where, like, if maybe there was more of an entertaining, shorter format of the matches, you could build some interest. Like maybe the lower level you go in tennis, that's maybe an interesting way of putting it, but it's like the matches are shorter or more engaging in that sense. So you have a faster turnaround of matches, not so much strain on the body. And then when you get to the like real money making level, that's where the matches can be a bit longer, because it's like a different thing, you know. I don't know if that's something worth considering, but now it's like you're gonna have like 3-hour 3-set matches in you know, futures 15K, right? It's like might not be a TV product then.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because at the end of the day, it's about marketing. Like all the sports is, how much revenue can you get to consistently invest in the sport, make it better year by year, and invest in your athletes as well. And I think tennis is in that great phase where they're coming out of one sort of timeline and going into another, of reinvesting into the team, into the players, reinvesting into the sport to try to make it a bit more accessible, but also attractive to the open public.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as a player and as a nerd and as someone who really cares about the sport, you're always thinking about ways like, how can tennis benefit from something, or how can tennis slot in to somewhere, or you're happy when you see like celebrities play tennis, but just because it means that people will see this, like if it's social media content, for example, and that will give tennis a little boost, you know, that tennis is somewhere a part of it. It feels like that's a nice effect. And now we have like the competitor, obviously, with pickleball being huge, and we talked about the retirements now. Jack Sock, John Isner, and Jack is going to pickleball after this, of course, and then also Donald Young, you know, also to pickleball, yeah. So it's they've done something very good with how they attract money to the sport. Like that's it's been easy because it's like a hype one, but
it is. Yeah, there's a lot of money being invested. Kyrgios has his own pickleball team. He invested with Osaka in Miami earlier this year. So who knows? When you come to the US, we'll hit the pickleball courts and we'll see how it goes. We'll take the Nordic Knots paddles, the pickleball paddles.
Yeah, but you're more into paddle, I guess. So how often do you play paddle?
Yeah. No, here there aren't any courts nearby. So whenever I go to Spain, that's when I play. But when I go, you can't get me off the court. I love it. It's such a great sport. It has a lot of variability just by having the walls on the side. I love it. Like it's good. If there was more paddle here, I might decrease my tennis hours to go to the paddle court.
Yeah, I know it's happening, especially to like tennis players that played on like a high level. I see them like if they, obviously you played so much tennis that maybe it's nice to get a break from it, right? Like my friend Nicky, for example, plays a lot of paddle now, and you see that happen, right? Like it's okay, all the hours on the tennis court. Paddle is a little bit more, maybe not so much strenuous on the body as tennis. You know, it's a smaller court. Okay, you move, but it's a little bit different in pace and different in surface as well, because like a hard court, playing tennis on very hard courts, is quite tough on the body, right?
On the body, for sure, for sure.
Where do you play in DC when you play? What's your club?
Honestly, I don't train at a club. I'll play at any court. To be honest, I have, fortunately, a good number of players in the area to hit with. So it's about who to play with and where. That's about it. There's no set location or a set player. I play with anyone and pretty much everywhere. So wherever there are courts, sometimes I'll drive 45 minutes. I'll drive an hour to play at some courts. But for me, it's the time on the court more than anything that I enjoy. So pretty much anywhere, you name it, and I might be there that weekend.
That's good. What are the court fees like? Is it expensive there now?
No. Fortunately, there's public courts all across the country and schools as well. Any sort of elementary, middle, high school that has courts, if it's not a private high school, they're open to the public. So there aren't any court fees, which I think is great, at least in the majority of the U.S. It's different, for example, in New York, where it's a bit more expensive and you have to reserve courts. But here, it's pretty much open to the public at any place. Like, for example, maybe a 20-minute drive from my house, they have 9 courts with lights, and it's free. Of course, they're packed every day at every hour, but yeah, they're free. So fortunately, it's accessible, and it's not expensive in terms of the court fees outdoors. Indoors is a different story. Yeah,
indoors amazing. Obviously is different. Like, it's the same. I mean, we don't even have indoor courts here in Marbella in Spain, right? So there's like, I mean, I grew up indoors because in Sweden the weather is against you, right? So you're playing outdoors on clay in the summer, and then you move in and you play indoors the rest of the year, pretty much. And by here, it's like, if it's raining, not much tennis. Like, and you can have like situations where you have. I think we had it a few months ago where it was like we had Dan Evans here. You know, Nikki was stringing for him. We had Muguruza. I even strung her rackets. And we had a bunch of players, right? And it was raining for days. And Chapo was here as well. And nobody could play. Like, there was nowhere to play. Like, we couldn't, because there's a few courts under a roof. Still, like, if you have side rain, it's going to be pretty terrible. But it's like in Torrevieja or somewhere. And it's like, it's pretty grim when it rains. But it luckily doesn't rain that often here. So otherwise, it's good clay stuff. But
yeah, I loved it. I loved it when I went. Don't be shocked if I retire there in the future.
It's a good place. You are very welcome.
Beautiful. Thank you. It's beautiful. The course we played at were 10 out of 10. Honestly, it's a beautiful facility, and I love the area. So next time I go, I'll let you know, and I'll be moving there for sure in a couple of years.
No, I would say it's a very good place to live, and I mean the idea, me and my friends, we talk about it, like how we can make it even more of a tennis hub, right? Like, maybe have even more courts or push it even harder, because in Spain, tennis regions are kind of like in, Barcelona, there's a lot of tennis, Alicante, but now I think Marbella is not so bad, right? So it's just like getting there.
Especially with Puente Romano, it's a beautiful club, great courts, and you have a lot of pros practicing there, throughout the year during their off season, including Djokovic. So can definitely become, I think it already is a decent tennis hub.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it can be even more. So more tournaments. Now they have the ITF seniors. They have one ITF. My friend arranges that. And now they will start doing a bit of more prize money tournaments also for any level, right? So it's going to be, I'm playing an open in a few days right here, which it's €1,000 prize money, but it's good. With fun. It's a 4-day tournament. Anyone can enter.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, no, you'll have to let me know how it goes. That's really nice. Next time I go, then
it's gonna be tough.
Sign up for a tournament.
As soon as you put money, the sharks are there. It's like all the tennis sharks.
People show up. Yeah. The more prize money, the higher the level, for sure.
Yeah. You can see in here you can have a guy who's like, oh yeah, I was 200 last year, and they were like, there's €1,000 I'm gonna play.
Oh man. Yeah, that's really nice. For sure.
Yeah, so I'll do some footage from there. I asked my friends who are good players to play. So
good. No, I'll definitely watch that then when you post it.
No, I can recommend that's part of it. That's good. Like, if you're, it's a good retirement place, right? Good summer place, but a good retirement place, especially the States can be a bit more grindy, like in a way, like the lifestyle here. It's a little bit more tranquilo, you know, so it's a bit different.
Good food, good music,
Both
good
good in
weather,
different ways.
good people, good tennis. That's it. You
Yeah,
don't need any more than that.
that's all you need, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your girlfriend is already in Spain, so you need to get
Yeah,
here
yeah,
sooner or
yeah.
later.
Yeah, yeah. She was here a little bit ago, which was great. She came during that week of the Citi Open, so it was good spending time together. And then yeah, probably December is the next time that I'll go.
But it's not too bad. Like even from some places you can go direct now. Like so quite a few places in Europe.
Yeah, yeah. And I know in the summer there's direct flight Madrid DC. It's only available in the summer months, so could be a good option as well. But I know that throughout the year, the direct flights go on and go off depending on the city that you're flying to.
Do you have any like long goals, plans, dreams for your tennis in like terms of like Restring and I mean you have your Instagram account as well, but what would you want it to be in like 5 years?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So I don't think about it enough. You know, some people say that you always have to have some sort of 5, 10 year goals. For me, I focus a lot on the present. That's where my mind is. It's what can I do now to be better. Definitely, the goal for 5 years is 100% to stay involved in the tennis community. And I honestly, I take it day by day. I want to be better tomorrow than I am today. I work long hours and I work hard, and I'm not scared to work even harder. So honestly, I can easily, yeah, I'll be happy to put in the work. And if we can have a positive impact, whether it's with Restring, the Instagram account, or me personally, if we can have a positive impact in the tennis community, grow as a person, but grow the community as well and give back, which I think is really important. It resonates with me a lot since tennis has given me a lot of connections and just life lessons. If I can give back along the way, for me, that'll be critical. So for me, yeah, the 5 year goal is to grow as a person, grow Restring, grow the Instagram account as much as I can. But if I can give back in 5 years more than I'm giving back today, that for me is a check mark. I'll be happy with that.
Is that something you got instilled from your parents, or is something you like come across that you want to be at least giving value back with your existence?
Yeah,
It's kind of similar to what I think.
for sure. Yeah, I don't want to take anything for granted. When we moved to Japan, Argentina and Japan, they're not close. You have to take a 14-hour flight from Tokyo to DC, and then a 12-hour flight from DC to Argentina. So you're spending over 24 hours on the plane. And you're far from home. So if anything ever happens, it's difficult being far away. So my parents have sacrificed a lot to get to have the life that we did and be able to live in Japan. So for me, is not taking anything for granted, trying to maximize each moment. And that's, for example, one of the main reasons I still take Japanese lessons. I don't want to lose my Japanese. Whether it's written, speaking, writing, or reading, I want to continue to have it with me. I want to live in Japan again. So one of the main reasons is to maintain, or one of the main reasons try to maintain my Japanese is to go back. So not taking anything for granted and trying to maximize what I can, to be honest.
I mean, I never been to Japan. Like my friend went first time now for some creative like inspiration trip. He's a designer. And he said he was spent a whole month there, on his own, and as a challenge for himself. Like he's left his girlfriend at home, but she had to work. And he said it was like eye-opening. He said it was like such an amazing trip, and really gave him lots of energy and stuff like this. He's also struggling with some immune diseases, so for him it was just like a huge challenge for him. But it was impressive, and he loved it. So what's so good about Japan? Like what do you miss from there? Where do you live? And what would you recommend to me, for example, if I go to Japan?
No, for me, it's the entire lifestyle in a way. The Japanese are first, it's a very safe country. So it's great for kids. Honestly, you have on the train 5, 6-year-old kids, 8-year-old kids that go to school, on their own to kindergarten, to elementary school. It's that safe. If you lose your wallet, if you go back to the place where you lost it, it'll still be there, put on the side so no one steps on it. It's extremely safe. It's a very respectable culture, which I like as well. There's indirect with the way of speaking as well. So pros and cons to that. And the Japanese are very nice. I like the culture. I like the way, the communication is, how they go about their day by day. The Japanese lifestyle as well is about being happy and having a purpose. You know, you've probably heard the word ikigai, which is fulfillment in a way. So I think that that's really important and resonates a lot with me and how I want to live. In a way, my day to day or week by week is trying to maximize my potential in a way. So for me, it's the complete package. Food is great, people are great overall. So that's one of the main reasons, or those are all the reasons why I'd like to go back and live there.
Yeah, you sold it really well. No, I also like that. I mean, sometimes you like if you have an old school perspective of like Japanese culture, it's like they push themselves too hard, like they work too much. But there's also so much like respect and like just the safety is a huge thing now today when some places in Europe and where the world are very dangerous places. And it's also that like that everybody's kind of respectful towards each other, which is something we should all strive towards. So it's seems like such a nice feeling in the air, kind of, of respect.
It is, and it's also the contrast in scenery as well. You have a beach, you have mountains. Tokyo is one of the biggest city, one of the most populated cities in the world. And then if you take the Shinkansen, the bullet train, an hour or two south, you can be in the middle of nowhere. So that as well for me, the scenic side is beautiful. You have everything you can imagine in a way.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, you sold it. I have to go. They even have some tennis there. How's the tennis scene?
The tennis scene in Japan, nice. I enjoy it. I played in like a federation, like the USTA in the US. It's called JOP, Japan Open Play, is what I played there with Nick as well. We played doubles there. Growing up, we would wear matching outfits when we were 13, 14 years old. So tennis scene was great. With the uprising of Nishikori at the time, slowly Osaka. That helped a lot lift up the tennis community. So it was good level. To be honest, it got pretty competitive and I enjoyed it. The only thing I didn't like was they have a surface there where it's quite popular. It's called Omni, which is grass with the sand, carpet with the sand on top, and it's quite popular. At least when I was growing up. So all the tournaments were on that surface and. I hate it. I prefer hard court.
Yeah, it's funny because I just got the question on. I recently published tonight I published a YouTube video about the A6 Gel Resolution 9 at clay court. Like it's a delayed review. I should have done it earlier, but I really like that shoe. It's a great shoe. And someone commented like, "Do you have a recommendation for Omni courts?" And I had, and this I didn't know until you told me now. I had no idea what it is, right?
Yeah.
I was like, Omni. What is Omni? It's like, is it all courts? What is Omni? Because even with like Omni is a word where it could mean like all types of courts, right? But I know the surface. I don't like it either. I think it's quite of an injury-prone surface. No, it's like you can really slip there. No.
Yeah, the difficult part is the sand. The sand distribution has to be even, and it's tough to see sometimes. You might, because if there's no sand, it's a carpet and you can't slide. It's meant to be a surface like clay where you can slide on. But if you start sliding and during the slide there's no sand, you hit carpet. So you might twist an ankle. So that's a difficult part. The reason I don't like it is because kind of like on clay, once I start sliding, I'll be playing on court 1, and when I begin sliding, I'll stop at court 5. Like I'll go on. I don't know how to stop too well on the sliding. So on the hard court, that's why I prefer it. You can control how far you slide. But yeah, Omni is definitely it's a great surface. It's interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much what I grew up playing on.
That's cool. I haven't. I know there's some artificial
now
grass.
You can respond to that question.
I will. Thanks to you. Yeah. Then I don't have any good recommendations though, because I don't know if you can maybe help me. But will clay court shoes be correct, or should you use like hard court shoes for the all court shoes?
I used hard court for everything, so I still do. So I don't know. I've never used a clay court shoe or a grass court. It was hard for one pair of shoes for all the tennis courts.
They said that you can actually use grass court shoes pretty well on clay, but I never tried that. But I'm not a big slider either. But you slide on hard courts as well, like Medvedev.
Yeah. Breaking shoelaces.
Because you have to do that today. Like the game has changed so much. You need to be that explosive. Like you can actually slide on hard courts. Like otherwise that's a way to control your movement better, right?
Yeah, it's few players that aren't sliding these days, to be honest. There's not
This
that
is the
many
older
that
guys
don't.
like Wawrinka. You won't see sliding on a hard court. Like that's no chance, right? But
Yeah, no chance. No, no, not with those knees. No chance.
but then all the younger guys, explosive, Alcaraz, Rune, all those guys, they slide all of them, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
Djokovic probably
All of them.
slides as well.
Yeah. Oh, Alcaraz is on a different level with sliding. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like so explosive. His legs are just like tree trunks, right? So
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah, they are. So it'll be interesting as well, to see how he does at the US Open. He can probably go quite far, semi-finals for sure. I think his match against Sinner, if they meet, will be one of the matches of the tournament for sure.
Yeah, I put that in my bracket as well. Like that match is key because Sinner is also in good form, and on a hard court, it's hard to knock him off the court. Like he's so like good at just dealing with pace and giving you pace back all the time. So I think it's gonna be rough, that one.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
great tennis, like great tennis level, right?
Yeah, and I'll join the US Open, that the chat, the leaderboard later, so you can see me.
Yeah.
Hopefully
I'm
not
gonna
being
be
last.
last because just based on the few results I've seen, I'm gonna watch a bit before I go to bed now. But just the results I've seen are like, wow, it's not good. It's like I was
We will
completely
see.
off.
We will see.
You seem like such a positive guy. I think you should do like mental inspiration to other people online.
No, I try to be positive. Try to look on the best side of everything, but yeah, always conscious that you have to put in the work always. Yeah, and I that's what I love as well is what goes on behind the scenes. Is you want to see a nice product at the end of the tunnel, but the hard work is where you learn, is where you grow, where you make mistakes. So I enjoy the process of that also.
I'm in a reading phase right now where I read a lot of books, and I used to write fiction, so I read a lot of fiction, but I completely stopped reading fiction, and I'm not writing it that much anymore. I write other stuff, but do you have any like books you're reading right now in terms of maybe finance books or self-help books or productivity books, or what are you into?
Yeah, no, for me it's a bit vague. It's a bit monotone, but I like business books. I like
Yeah.
entrepreneur books. So I like to hear why a business, succeeded. But there's a lot of books. For example, the founder of Patagonia, he's written a great book. Same thing with the founder of Nike, with Shoe Dog, founder of Asics. They all have books that they talk about why they succeeded, but the struggles within there. So that's what I like to see, and I try to resonate with Restring really as much as I can throughout, and see if the challenges that they've had, how to prevent it, how to prevent Restring from having it. So those are the books really that I like, is all entrepreneur, business oriented, and to learn from their mistakes, so I don't have to hopefully have the same ones, or if there's something that worked for them, hey, can I do the same thing so that it might work for me? Could this be an option or a route we can take? So that's right now where my biggest interest is. Before it was all finance, stock market oriented, but now it's a bit more on the entrepreneurial side.
I think it's good to change. I mean, like I do maybe phases where I buy like 3-4 books. I usually do like Kindle books, and then you can get them straight away, right? So you have a fix. It's almost like YouTube. You can just click a video and you watch it. I listen to a lot of like modern wisdom stuff like that on podcasts and stuff, finance, science, whatever. But I have a phase now. I'm reading like different types of books, but like more like kind of entrepreneur books in that way, or like this how to eliminate distractions in the online space we're living now and stuff like that, right? Building atomic habits. I downloaded some book, how like a sales book from this famous fitness guy, Hormozy, I think, or Alex Hormozy or something like that. Yeah,
Oh,
he's
okay,
wrote
okay,
about
okay.
100 million, dollars sales, something. I'm butchering it, but yeah. So I think reading is very important. Like, and I you can easily leave it for a while, so you need to kind of have a good habit. I think it's like tennis with your training or anything. You have a good habit for it. You need to do it a little bit every day. Is that what you're doing? You're trying to read a bit every day, or
Yeah. For me, it's not like I have one set to path. For me, it's as long as I can learn with what I'm doing, whether it's reading, whether it's a podcast. I struggle a bit more with podcasts, but if I can learn, like on driving, for example, podcasts are great because I can focus a little bit better. But as long as I can get something out of it, that for me is my go-to. So there's no one route specifically that I'd like to go with during certain times, but it's more or less, if I can get something out of it, I'll choose that one.
Well, man, we've been doing this twice now for a few. We've not been talking for 5 hours, but we did it in 2 sessions, which is cool. 2 sets.
Yeah.
I lost both of them, but that's okay.
I don't know.
Take it.
I don't know.
No, it's been great. You're a very inspirational young dude. I think it's good, and I think people will enjoy listening to you. And I wish you all the best with Restring. And we will, of course, keep in touch and hopefully play more tennis when you get back into Marbella, or I come and visit you and your girl in Madrid, which would be nice as well. Or in DC, which I need to go back to. I actually had like an invitation to go this year, but couldn't make it with the time because I was in Sweden for a few weeks and it didn't work out really 100%.
We'll make it happen. No, but Jonas, thanks so much, honestly, I enjoyed the podcast, enjoyed talking to you. It's been great, and I love what you're doing with Tennis Third, adding a new angle, being able to speak with so many and different angles of the tennis community, which I think is really nice. Whether it's Karud tomorrow, Ricky May, previous coaches, or other Instagram or other YouTubers like Essential Tennis. I think what you're doing is really nice. So a privilege really to be able to speak with you and be on the podcast.
Cool, man. I'm happy to hear. And we'll keep in touch. Have a nice rest of the day now.
Thanks, Jonas. Take care.
Thanks.